Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are really getting into Ezekiel chapter 6.
Yeah, it's a powerful chapter. We're using insights from an online study, MCS Ezekiel chapter 6.
Right. And our goal, really, is to unpack what Ezekiel's communicating here,
Mm-hmm.
especially God's judgment against Israel and this interesting instruction to talk to mountains and hills.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
quite specific. And it's a definite shift from chapter 5, which was, very focused on Jerusalem.
Exactly. Now we're looking more towards the northern part of the country,
A much broader scope.
Okay, so let's dive in. Verses 1 and 2, God speaks to Ezekiel, calls him human being.
Which is typical for Ezekiel.
Right. And tells him, face toward the mountains of Israel and prophesy against them. So why mountains?
Well, this is where that study material gets really interesting. It connects it to Jewish thought, where mountains often symbolize male leaders, and hills are sometimes linked with female leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So prophesying against mountains and hills, it's really a message aimed squarely at the leadership.
So the leaders of the northern kingdom specifically, it's not just geography.
Exactly. It's about the people in charge, their influence.
Got it. That makes sense. Now verses 3 through 5, the judgment sounds, well, pretty intense. It mentions mountains, hills, ravines, and valleys.
It is intense.
Okay.
It's broad. It hits the leaders, yes, but also the common people. God says, I myself will bring a sword against you.
And destroy your high places, the places of false worship.
Mm-hmm. Altars wrecked, sun pillars broken. The whole infrastructure of their idolatry is targeted.
And the imagery is quite grim. Throwing the slain in front of idols, scattering bones, laying corpses right there.
It's incredibly graphic, and the text makes it clear why. It's because of their idolatry. They turn to these things for help instead of God.
They put their trust in completely the wrong place.
Absolutely, which leads into verses 6 and 7 describing this total desolation.
Everywhere you live, it says, cities destroyed, high places gone, idols abolished.
Yes, it covers the entire land, and it affects, quote, all who trust in the things of their hands.
Okay, things of their hands. That sounds significant.
It is. The study connects this to that, recurring human tendency, trying to achieve salvation or security through our own efforts, building our own way to heaven, so to speak.
Like the Tower of Babel story, that kind of self-reliance.
Precisely. And the study argues this spirit isn't just ancient history. It's around even today, maybe especially in what the Bible calls the last days. This idea that, if humans just cooperate, we can solve everything ourselves.
A kind of collective self-sufficiency that leaves God out of the picture.
Exactly. And that's why the judgment has such a clear purpose, stated right in verse 7.
So that men will see that they are only men and God is in charge.
Mm-hmm. The dead falling among them. That all leads to that declaration. Then you will know that I am Adonai.
Adonai, the Lord, recognizing his sovereignty. It's a harsh lesson.
A very harsh lesson, but seemingly necessary from God's perspective in this context.
But then, verse 8, there's a shift. Nevertheless, I will leave a remnant, hope.
Yes. This idea of the remnant is so important throughout the Bible. Even in judgment, God preserves some. Some will escape the sword, even scattered among the nations.
He keeps a promise, even to the northern kingdom here.
He does. And verse 9 tells us something crucial about this remnant.
What's the key characteristic?
It's a repentant heart. Those who escape, scattered among the nations, they will remember God.
Remember him after everything.
Yes. And listen to God's perspective here. It's quite moving. How broken I've been over their whoring hearts that left me, and over their eyes that went whoring after their idols.
Wow. Broken. God expressing that depth of hurt over their spiritual adultery.
It's powerful language.
Huh?
And it leads to the remnant's reaction. They're going to loathe themselves for their disgusting practices.
So the judgment actually works to bring about this repentance.
Exactly. The study suggests this partial judgment, the exile, was enough to break through their denial, to make them see their sin for what it was.
That's a tough dynamic. Judgment leading to repentance.
It is. And the study draws a parallel, suggesting something similar might happen during the future Great Tribulation, that severe partial judgments might lead many to finally turn to God. It's a pattern.
Which brings us back to the purpose in verse 10. They will know he is Adonai.
And that their idols were really nothing, utterly powerless.
They'll finally understand God's control.
Yes. And the study emphasizes God knew this partial judgment was necessary, specifically to bring them back to him.
So it's discipline, however severe, with a restorative aim, not just destruction.
Precisely. Though it also implies, as the Study notes for the last days that sometimes hearts can become so hard that only severe judgment gets through.
It really speaks to the depth of the problem, doesn't it?
It does, which might be why, in verse 11, God tells Ezekiel to do something quite dramatic.
Right. Strike with your hand and stamp with your foot and bemoan these terrible practices. What's that about?
It's symbolism for intense emotion. Striking hands, stomping feet, it shows great anguish, deep sorrow over their sin and the coming judgment.
A performance of grief, almost.
And saying, alas, according to the study, signifies that the judgment is set. It's decreed. It will happen. No turning back now.
And the tools are listed again. Sword, famine, plague.
Yes, verse 12 makes it clear nobody escapes based on location. Far away, plague, nearby. Sword, besieged, famine. God says, I will spend my fury on them. It's total.
Affecting everyone, all the people, the whole kingdom.
And then verse 13 brings it right back to the locations of their sin. Where will the dead lie?
Among their idols, around their altars, on every high hill, on every mountaintop, under every green tree. Basically, everywhere they practiced idolatry.
Exactly. The places they went for help, the places they offered sacrifices to appease false gods. Maybe looking to those false leaders the mountains and hills symbolize.
Yet instead of finding life or security there,
they find death. It's a devastatingly clear message about the futility and danger of idolatry. Judgment meets them right where their sin was committed.
a very direct, very visual consequence. And finally, verse 14, the land itself is judged.
Yeah, God stretches out his hand, makes the land a desolate waste worse than the Divla Desert, which was known for being extremely barren, total devastation.
And the reason for this judgment?
Same reason, repeated one last time. Then they will know that I am Adonai. The judgment on the land, just like on the people, is meant to show the remnant, those who survive, that God alone is in control of everything.
Wow. Okay. So Ezekiel 6, it's incredibly direct, unflinching about idolatry and its consequences.
It really is. But these themes, idolatry, judgment, repentance, a remnant, God's sovereignty, the failure of self-reliance, they definitely reach beyond ancient Israel.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the connection for you listening today. We've unpacked these ideas, turning away from God, trusting in false things, the reality of consequences, but also the hope of repentance and the remnant.
And the ultimate purpose often being a recognition of who God truly is.
So the question for us maybe is, how do these concepts, idolatry, self-reliance, judgment, repentance, how do they look today in our world, maybe even, in our own lives?
Where do we see similar patterns playing out? It's worth thinking about.
Definitely. And here's maybe a final thought to chew on. If the judgment in Ezekiel was so specifically located at the sites of their idolatry, where they put their trust in things other than God, what might that suggest about where consequences tend to show up today when people, or maybe even systems, turn away from truth or put ultimate faith in things that, well, ultimately can't deliver?
Where might the fallout land, so to speak? That's a challenging question.
It is. Something to consider as we wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for exploring Ezekiel chapter 6 with us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And, speaking of seeing God work, even amidst difficulties, if you're interested in modern-day accounts.
Oh, right. There's that book, Misfits for Jesus.
Yeah.
True accounts of people experiencing Jesus.
Exactly. It's full of stories connected to Enduring Freedom Ministries, EFM, showing God working in pretty amazing ways today. You can find it on Amazon.
And EFM, they're doing important work. One of their big projects right now is actually setting up a food pantry in Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem, yeah. Providing real, tangible help and showing God's love in such a significant place. It's a vital ministry, especially now.
Absolutely. If you feel led to support that, you can find ways to donate through Enduring Freedom Ministries. It really does make a difference.
It really does. And finally, if you got something out of this discussion today, we'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to The Deep Dive on YouTube.
Yeah, it helps us keep these conversations going.
Thanks again for listening.